So, I wanted to spend some time today talking a little bit about fear. Of course, knowing that in a short talk like this, it's not going to be comprehensive, but just to recognize that so many of us and many people are experiencing a lot of fear right now, and the importance of spending some time with how to understand that, maybe how to be with that. Recognizing that in this practice, our goal is not to get to a place where we never experience fear, but more so that we build a relationship with it as it arises, a relationship that's really born out of wisdom and compassion. And we know and certainly feel how, when our nervous system becomes activated in a fear state, it really shifts our whole experience. Right? Our body is reacting as if there's a threat. It starts to look for cues of danger. Our mind narrows, our view changes. When we're really caught in fear, it can change how we see the world and certainly how we see each other. And because of that, we're more likely to hurt each other or behave unskillfully or impulsively when we're caught by fear. And you've probably noticed this when you sit, that if fear arises, often very quickly there can be additional ripples or waves of other reactions, other feelings, right? Anxiety or panic or anger, the mind kind of trying to predict the future. And we can get more afraid because as the mind looks ahead, there's even more that's unknown. Or sometimes we can become more identified with and attached to our beliefs and our views, or our sense of rightness and others' wrongness. And so we know that in this practice, some of what we're doing is learning through wisdom how to be responsible for what is showing up here in our minds and bodies, and not immediately just bring our reactions out into our lives or into the world. And so it feels really important when fear is arising or moving through to slow down and watch, and even heed how it can fan the flames of greed, hatred, and delusion, if not held mindfully. And just want to be clear, of course, this doesn't mean we don't take the kind of body's messages of fear seriously. Often fear is information, right? That something is feeling threatening or big or uncertain. But if we think about the holding environment, which we're talking about this month, fear can be very tight and constricting. We were talking about the elements last week, and I think about the fear element. When I'm in a state of fear, it feels like I don't have enough air to breathe. Uh, and everything mobilizes, and the inner holding environment can get so tight that I don't even have the space to kind of be with it. Thanissaro Bhikkhu wrote about fear, talks about fear. He said, think of a deer at night suddenly caught in a hunter's headlights. It's confused, angry. It senses danger and that it's weak. I'm going to use the word vulnerable instead of weak. In the face of danger, it wants to escape. These 5 elements, confusion, aversion, a sense of danger, a sense of vulnerability, and a desire to escape, are present to a greater or lesser extent in every fear. And he really invites us in our practice to focus particularly on the confusion and aversion. He writes, the most unskillful response to fear is when, perceiving dangers to our own life or property, we believe that we can gain strength and security by destroying the lives and property of others. He goes on, this is probably the most disconcerting human weakness of all, our inability to trust ourselves to do the right thing when the chips are down. If standards of right and wrong are meaningful only when we find them convenient, they have no real meaning at all. And I hear this, there's a lot in there, but that he's orienting us to our ethics and how essential it is that we learn actually to understand and be with fear skillfully. And the meditation teacher, Michael Grady, also talks about fear and brings in some similar themes. He says that fear is especially difficult to be with because of that aversion and because of the identification that often comes with it in relationship to it. So the aversion, it's unpleasant in the mind and body. As we mentioned, right, in the body, there's often that raciness, constriction, there's changes in the body temperature, in breath. And in the mind, it's unpleasant because usually fear connects us to our inherent vulnerability and powerlessness, the reality of changes that scare and overwhelm us. And we don't like that. I don't like that. I can say that sitting, here. It's very uncomfortable and unpleasant. And he writes about how the mind can easily identify with fear, can see it as ours, as something to control or get rid of. Or we judge it, or we can judge ourselves and have shame for feeling it. So while it's understandable and pretty natural to have aversion to it or to want it to go away, without a real relationship with it, there can be that domino effect internally and then externally. And so, what are some ways that we can slow down and name it and build a relationship with fear? Michael Grady, he names a couple of things as well that I just wanted to touch on. First, on the cushion, he recommends focusing on touch points or contact points as we meditate. So, when there are strong emotions like fear that are unpleasant, he encourages us to focus on feet on the ground, or body contact with cushion or chair, or hands touching. So bringing our attention very intentionally to more neutral sensations. He writes about metta, understandably, right? Welcoming the fear, welcoming ourselves when we're caught by it or in a state of fear. He offers that it can be helpful to mentally note fear. And I think that's really helpful for me when I can just name, oh, this is fear, right? It's just that like teeny bit of distance, little bit of mindfulness. And then maybe there's that opportunity to like, oh yeah, it's like this. My breath is short. Oh, I start to freeze, or there's trembling. My mind is racing. Oh, I'm noticing a story about this person's wrong. I notice a desire to hide or give up or fight. Okay, we don't have to argue with any of that. We don't have to force it to stop. We can begin to maybe come alongside it as we recognize fear. And I think this is the beginning of investigation, which we've talked a lot about in these last few months. And investigating fear itself as the object of the attention, rather than investigating the content of fear and the content of fearful thoughts. If in moments we can do that, we can watch it actually arise and pass. We can see its impermanence, the suffering that comes from getting in a battle with it or identifying with it. So on the one hand, right, we have lots of options. We can bring our attention a little bit away from it to other sensations, just to calm and soothe a little. We can begin to welcome it, welcome ourselves. We can be with it as the object of our meditation practice. Michael Grady gave an example of this working with a teacher who really invited him to be with the raw experience of fear. And he writes, he encouraged me to bring sustained attention to the myriad of unpleasant body sensations that were arising because of the fear, while restraining my impulse to think about the fear. It took all of my perseverance to be willing to be attentive rather than to move away. And I found that so honest and so helpful, right? His recognition of how strong and instinctual that aversion to it is. And so just to acknowledge that we may only be able to be with fear in really short moments and then ground away, right? I think about how Susan also often talks about creating a large, big pasture, right, for emotions to really have their full energy in. And I think that can be really helpful with fear. Wide pasture internally, and if we need, like actually moving around, letting it move through the space. And I wanted to name also that we have so much support in this practice in being with the unknown wisely. Right? This tradition teaches us that everything changes and everything is uncertain because of that. And so it doesn't necessarily make things that scare us easy, but we do have that framework. We have a clarity about the uncertainty and inherent vulnerability as being foundational to our existence. And then, of course, I think we really need a lot of compassion when fear is strong. Compassion for ourselves, our wanting things to be different, being gentle when fear is present, almost as we would if a child came to us afraid of the dark. And then in moments, always, we might widen that out to compassion for others. And that might be easier, actually, for some of us. Thinking of all beings feeling fear, all who maybe are vulnerable to harm, to death, to change and loss. And in moments caring about that, as long as that doesn't totally overwhelm, right? But it does connects us. And possibly in moments also compassion for people who are managing fear unskillfully and wishing, may we all feel safe and peaceful and free, internally and externally. So I wanted to end with a quote by Traleg Kyabgon Rinpoche. He says, all the fears are not going to just magically disappear. We will need to develop stability and insight. Stability in itself is not sufficient. Feeling a bit more calm and relaxed is not sufficient to overcome the deep sense of anxiety and anxiousness at the core of our being. To overcome it, we need insight, which, according to Buddhism, involves profound reflection on our lives. That includes looking deeply at our fear. Looking deeply shows us its nature and teaches us how to work with it. So thank you. Thanks for your attention. So let's take some time to transition. Always when there's a lot of words, it can be helpful just to reconnect to the body. Maybe move around a little bit, stretch, stretch up. Maybe twist the body really gently from side to side, or roll the neck from side to side. Maybe allow the breath to bring a little more spaciousness, a sense of airing out, refreshing our holding environment, the space inside, the space around us as well. And in whatever way is helpful, just inviting the attention again to come down into the body. Perhaps noticing those contact points, as Michael Grady talked about. Are we noticing the cushion or chair underneath us, underneath our seat? And perhaps feet touching the ground or hands touching the lap or body or each other. We can always come back to those contact points. Or sometimes it might feel good to come back to the whole body sitting, the front of the body, back, sides, the whole body sitting and breathing, alive. And perhaps see if you get a sense of what feels right for practice today. If you'd like to let the attention rest with an anchor like the breath, or sounds, or those sensations, sensations of hands, sensation of air moving, touching the outside of the body. Maybe there's a metta phrase or word that would feel most supportive to come back to and allow the attention to rest with today. It's welcoming ourselves, welcoming our attention to be here, to connect and receive movement, movement of life. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for your practice. And let me let you unmute. Let's just say our goodbyes. Yeah.
Bye,
Really
everyone.
good to see you all.
Thank
Have a good
you.
day.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank
Have a
you.
great
We
day.
needed that.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank
That was
you.
terrific.
Be
Bye-bye.
well. Thank you all.
Thank you, Catherine.
Thank
Beautiful.
you, Catherine. Great talk.
Yeah.
Be well, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
See you
Be
tomorrow.
well. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you so much. See you
Bye-bye.
tomorrow.
Rick Hansen is on tonight at 9 p.m. Eastern.
Thanks, Andrew. Thanks.